It's time for your daily LSU baseball update with Musso at the box. Now, Matt Musso.
Off and running. Welcome in. Another edition of Musso at the box. Fired up to have you with me. Presented by Gotlit Light Installers. LSU, they steamroll toward the regular season finale against the South Carolina Gamecocks. A trip up to Columbia awaits as LSU looks to polish off a regular season, get to 19 wins in the SEC, and lock in their spot as a top 8 national seed. What I want to do today is kind of take our first look at South Carolina, just some surface level, what's gone wrong for them, some updates on some very key injuries, the latest that we know on the Gamecock front there. What is LSU's, perceived advantages, disadvantages? Where could South Carolina give them a little bit of problems? What has gone so wrong for South Carolina? Just a good lengthy overview before we get into our final thoughts here later in the week in our series prediction. Thought today would be a nice time to do that. And it's never too early for a mock draft. And there's one in particular that caught my eye, and it has to do with Kade Anderson. So I definitely want to kind of touch on that as well. And maybe a little bit on the postseason. We'll see how much time permits at the end. So please smash the like button. If you have not already, please get subscribed to the YouTube channel and on your favorite podcast app. Just search Musso at the box. You can take the show with you wherever you go. Follow me on social media, Twitter, X, at Musso Matthew. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook. All of that is greatly appreciated. And let's go ahead and just dive right into it. On the surface, you look at South Carolina and you see a baseball team that is not very good. That is just as plainly and as bluntly as I can put it. They are 26-26 overall, so they are right at 500, 5-22 in the SEC, and there's not really one thing that South Carolina does that is spectacular. Looking through their ranks in the SEC, it is bottom third, just about everywhere you look. Pick a category. Why is that? Well, there's a couple of reasons. Number one, when you have a coaching change, it's always going to be rougher in that first year. It just is. You have the transfer portal and guys are going to leave, which obviously happened at South Carolina. Who you hire is very important. And we can get into Paul Maineiri at South Carolina a little bit as well. And investment. And quite honestly, it just doesn't feel like the investment is where it needs to be for South Carolina. Especially now in the NIL era and things of that nature. I mean, you have to be willing to put forth the resources necessary to field a team. And it's not just NIL. It's been for more than a decade. South Carolina has not been to the College World Series since 2012. That was coming off 3 straight trips and back-to-back national championships when they went last. Ray Tanner retires, takes the athletic director job, and they've just never really been able to quite replace him. You bring in Paul Maineiri now, who's definitely at the twilight of his career. We all know that. And investment has never been more important than it is currently, and South Carolina lacks there. They just do. And I think that's showing. They're not, and again, the one thing there is they're not fishing in the same pond as the upper echelon in the SEC. So that's one reason you end up there. Now, the fundamental issues they've had, that's a whole nother deal. And that deals a lot more with coaching. There's been a lot of injuries for this South Carolina team. I mean, Eli Jerzenbeck on the mound, supposed to be one of their best arms, probably their Friday night starter. He goes down very early in the season and is out for the year with an elbow issue. We know what that means, obviously, for a pitcher. You've dealt with a couple of other injuries on your pitching staff. You've dealt, obviously, now the last few weeks with an injury to Ethan Petrie, who is the best hitter on South Carolina's team. I understand the numbers in the SEC maybe weren't where they wanted them at points this season, but for him to go down with the sprained AC joint like he has and missing, that was against Kentucky, I believe. He has missed the last. Let me put it this way. When he went down with the injury, sprained AC joint in his shoulder, there were 3 weeks left. You had 9 games remaining. So you've been without him the last 2. Paul Maineiri, when he announced the injury, mentioned that it would be 2 to 4 week recovery. So it's likely that Ethan Petrie's out for the year. That's really the last concrete update we've had on that. Paul Maineiri at South Carolina, they play Winthrop on Tuesday night. They're actually one of the few SEC teams that has a midweek game this week. After that, hopefully Mainieri's asked about some type of an update and we get a little more clarity. But for now, Petrie's still out, which is a massive disadvantage for this South Carolina team and a very big break for the LSU Tigers. 2 to 4 weeks. They were hopeful maybe on that 3rd week they could get him back for the LSU series. But again, we don't know. After their game on Tuesday night, hopefully Paul Maineiri gives some type of an update. Hopefully he's asked about the status of Ethan Petrie and we can get, some clarity. Other than that, just keep your eye out for the SEC availability report. But as of right now, Ethan Petrie's still out for South Carolina. And look, y'all, that's a guy who on the season's hitting .329, 10 homers. That leads their team. 34 RBI, which is still second on the team, and he hasn't played in 2 weeks. So at least 2 weeks. And that kind of tells you how it's going for that South Carolina offense. There are a couple of guys like Nathan Hall and Henry Kazmar. Those are guys to watch in that lineup. But overall, their offense has been pretty consistent all year and not really in a good way. Like you look at South Carolina, they're hitting .269 overall in the season. They're hitting .264 in conference play. They don't hit the ball out of the park very much, which is interesting given the park they play in is tiny, to say the least. And the pitching has just really, really let them down. South Carolina has lost their last 7 SEC games. In their last 6, they've been outscored 85-23. Like, LSU should be able to go into this series and put up runs. South Carolina is second to last in the SEC in walks allowed, so you should have free passes. You will see a righty and a lefty in that order, most likely in the rotation. Brandon Stone, then Jake McCoy. Stone the righty, McCoy the lefty. And what they do on, game 3 is really anybody's guess. You've seen Dylan Eskew, who came back from injury, really kind of start to take that role a little bit as of late. He started 2 out of the last 3 weekends. That is normally one of their better arms, but even him, coming off of injury, it's an ERA north of 7.5. I'm trying to find something because I hate sitting here and just running this team down, because the last thing you want to do is go into this overconfident and get beat. And then it feels like the sky is falling and everything's, everything's burning and it's the end of the world. It's just hard to find something that this South Carolina team has done particularly well. What I will tell you is they have been competitive at times this season. When you look at their 5 wins in the SEC, 3 of them have come against teams that were ranked at the time of that matchup. They beat Oklahoma, and then they took a series off of Ole Miss. And Coach Bianco's had the Rebels playing some pretty good baseball over the course of those season. They have dropped their last couple of series and really struggled in that regard. But over the grand course of the season, Ole Miss has been pretty good. I mean, that's a team that's going to be a 2 seed somewhere in the regional. They were ranked just outside of the top 10 when South Carolina knocked them off, and that was in Columbia. So there is some competitive fire in that bunch that you've seen. This will be the second time they've welcomed the number 1 team into Founders Park. The other time was Tennessee. South Carolina played them really hard the first 2 days. They had chances. They had a lead even in game number 2 before Tennessee would come back. And that's just kind of been the story. When you look at their, performance against teams in the top 4 in the SEC, And I want to make sure I have this correct. They have played. Yeah, I had it correct. They've played one team in the top 4 in the league currently, and that's Arkansas. Now, it was on the road in Fayetteville, but Arkansas took it to them pretty good. 12-2, 12-3, 11-4. You just beat that Arkansas team. LSU is a top 4 team in the league. This is really where South Carolina has struggled. Like, that's the one example we have of it. And I mean, they've just been prone to giving up a lot of runs. Injuries to the staff and just, not the quality of arm that you're used to seeing in the SEC has kind of led to all of it. So I caution going into this overconfident just because, look, 3 out of their 5 wins are against ranked opponents. They took a series. They a big upset against Ole Miss at home. Maybe that was their weekend. We'll see. It's certainly been really poor the last couple of times out. In their last 2 weekends, they've given up 20 runs in a game each weekend. There's just not a lot. And again, without Ethan Petrie, that really hurts that lineup. Like, that really, really does. Obviously, he's going to be an early draft pick come July, and that's just a big bat you're missing. And as of this recording, he is still out for the season. Again, hopefully we'll get something more there. It's just one that LSU should win. Like, you should go there and win 2 out of 3. But again, the cautionary tale is what happened in College Station this past weekend. Missouri had been swept all season long. Literally, they were 0 for 24, like, in the league. That's another team you would have looked at and said, man, they don't really do anything well. They got a guy here and a guy there in the lineup, but there's not much they do well. A&M couldn't have been any hotter. 3 great series wins against Tennessee, Arkansas, and LSU got them off the bubble. Like, they were in, and they got swept on their home field. So, you have to go in there and you have to play your best baseball. But there are things that you just really like about LSU in this weekend, and a lot of it's at the front of your rotation, if we're being honest, in Kade Anderson and Anthony Eyanson. So we've talked an awful lot about the last 3 weeks from those two, and I have some numbers to really put it all into perspective, looking at over the last 3 weeks. But I did want to point this out. MLB.com, MLB Pipeline, they released their first official 2025 mock draft, and they have Kade Anderson going 3rd overall to the Seattle Mariners. The number 9 overall prospect in the draft is where they have Anderson. They note the 4-pitch mix, great starter profile, and that he's really worked his way up the board. Y'all, I think when you looked at Kade Anderson coming into this season, he was probably 2nd round, maybe in those comp rounds in between the 1st and the 2nd. He has worked his way all the way up to the 3rd overall pick, according to MLB.com and MLB Pipeline, to the Mariners. That shows you the season that he's had. He is chasing Liam Doyle for the national lead in strikeouts. He's 2nd right now behind Doyle, obviously 2nd in the SEC as well. He has outdueled some of the top draft prospects like Kyson Witherspoon. We know that was the day he threw the complete game in that matchup against Oklahoma. For what it's worth, in this mock draft, Witherspoon is 11th overall. He outdueled Liam Doyle as well, who's 2nd overall. Like, he has proven the moment's not too big. You love the poise, the 4-pitch mix, everything. That's an awesome honor for Kade Anderson. And again, y'all, he should be healthy. They don't seem too worried about the risk with him going into this series. So that's a big thing, to kind of look at. And I couldn't be happier for the guy. Like, really couldn't. To go there and have the rough year he had a year ago, especially in conference play, stick with it, develop another pitch, work hard with Nate Yeski. You really see the development there between those in the relationship and obviously on the mound with those two. And he's pitched himself all the way up into a top 5 pick, projected top 5 pick. And that's awesome. And again, that's why when you had the wrist injury a week ago, it's like, Okay, yeah, we all understand what that means for LSU, but you really hate it for Kade Anderson because of the work he's put in and the money that he's made himself. You want to see that be able to come to fruition, because if it was not for an injury out of high school when he was at St. Paul's, he probably doesn't even make it to LSU. So you would hate to see that happen to him again, and he looks good to go. Third overall is the projection, at least from MLB Pipeline. Now, in terms of what that means for this weekend, you look at him and Eyanson, and y'all, I've told you going into that Arkansas weekend that I thought they were the best 1-2 in the nation. LSU's the only school with 2 starting pitchers in the top 5 nationally in strikeouts, and they have just been nails for LSU the last 3 weeks against 3 of the best offenses that LSU has faced. I would tell you, outside of Auburn, the 3 best offenses that LSU has faced this year. And Anthony Eyanson, in his last 3 starts, has gone 20 2/3, given up 3 earned, walked 6, and punched out 33. Kade Anderson, in his last 3, has gone 19 innings, 6 earned runs, 7 walks, 33 punch outs. So in total, Eyanson and Anderson and Eyanson, Finkel and Einhorn, 39 2/3 innings pitched, 9 earned runs, 13 walks, 66 strikeouts. They are pitching to a 2.06 ERA combined over their last 3, and LSU has a 4-2 record in those 6 games. So that's the cautionary tale at the back end of this conversation again for this series. Yes, they've been awesome, and they should be able to go out there and carve up South Carolina. Nothing personal against South Carolina. They've carved up the best 3 lineups potentially in the SEC the last 3 weeks. That should carry over. But you still managed to lose 2 of those games. So that, again, that's the cautionary deal there. Again, as we talked about in our listener Q&A a day ago, I would expect LSU to just go Anderson, Eyanson, TBA, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. There's no real reason to pitch off. You do that, you potentially burn through relievers and risk losing a ball game to start that series and giving South Carolina hope. You don't need to do that. That's a team that has struggled on offense. Throw your best at them straight out the gate and knock them down. Knock them down, put your foot on them, and don't let them get up. But just some context behind how good Anthony Eyanson and Kade Anderson have been the last 2 weeks against elite competition in the SEC. So definitely wanted to point that out as well as part of our kind of first look at South Carolina and how those 2 match up. The other thing I wanted to get into here while we have a little bit of time, and let me remind you about Got-Lit light installers. Got-Lit lights. I want to talk about Paul Maineiri here in a second. Got-Lit light installers, gotlitlights.com. You go there for your quote, not just the Christmas lights anymore. They still offer the Christmas lights in the winter, and you should look into that. It's custom design, cut to fit your house, meet any of your design specifications. They come install, maintain, tear down, and store the lights for you until the next Christmas season. But they've expanded. What they've kept is that same great customer service, that same great relationship building where they make you customer for life. But it's expanded now into the permanent outdoor landscape lighting for your front yard flower beds, your backyard patio and pool area, and of course, temporary outdoor lighting, which is very similar to the Christmas lights for all your private events. Custom design, cut to fit, never a loose light. It's Got-Lit light installers. They install, maintain, tear down, and store the lights. Got-Lit light installers, gotlitlights.com, and tell them you heard it right here on Musso at the Box. I do want to give a few thoughts on Paul Maineiri and his time so far at South Carolina. And I know, look, there's a lot of people in Columbia that want him gone, and I can understand that. There's definitely been some head-scratching comments about the strength of the league, underestimating it. That was a brutal comment, just first and foremost. I mean, when you look at Paul Maineiri's tenure at LSU, my guy, you won the league 4 times. Like, you won this league 4 times. Has it gotten more difficult? Sure, but you got a taste of that as well toward the tail end of your time at LSU. And in his time, the tail end at LSU, the SEC record was really one of the things that everybody pointed to. It had dropped off. But still, how many times did Paul Maineiri win the SEC tournament? He won the league 4 times. Like, You know the strength of this league. Again, has it gotten stronger a little bit with the transfer portal and things of that nature? Sure, maybe. But, I mean, Paul Maineiri's time at LSU coincided with the SEC really ascending to the top of college baseball and putting the stranglehold on it. So, yes, that comment was like wild. Like, that's insane. And even given the time he says it, that's rough too. I revere Paul Maineiri for what he did at LSU. I know the way it ended, and it wasn't great, and people were ready for a change, and it was time for a change, and all of those things. But the one thing I've said, even on this show, since Paul Maineiri retired, I remember doing the show the day he retired, is there was never going to be any slander allowed, because that guy brought LSU back to the pinnacle of college baseball, a national championship in year 3, won the SEC 4 times, owned the SEC tournament, 6 or 7 consecutive national seeds, top 8 national seeds. He had you as the standard again. And that's the way he needs to be remembered, and is remembered at LSU by the majority of LSU fans. And the further removed you continue to get from it, it will be everywhere. Like, Paul Maineiri one day will probably have a statue outside of Alec Box Stadium, as will Jay Johnson. So it's a great resume. And that's what I remember. Like, his legacy is safe for me because of what he did at LSU. Not to mention what he did at Notre Dame, bringing them to the College World Series. I mean, coaching at the Air Force Academy. Like, his legacy is awesome. He's one of the most active, winningest head coach in college baseball right now. The problem is what's happened this year. Because I don't want to say you could see it coming, because I don't think anyone really expected him to go in there, have a 500 team, and be 5-22 in the league. The 5-22 in the league is really the sticking point for this right now. You know, and it wasn't a great situation that he inherited at South Carolina. That's a team a year ago, y'all, that actually they weren't really that good. They got hot down the stretch, played themselves into the NCAA tournament, and they played a little bit out over their skis. Like, there's a reason they still fired their coach after an NCAA tournament appearance. Because the whole of that season wasn't what you saw at the end. So you don't inherit a great situation. Transfer portal, all of that. This is really Paul's first foray into it. NIL portal, he got back into the game at a really interesting time. And that's what everyone really said when he was hired. And you can't, but again, even with that, I wouldn't look at this and go, oh, this is expected for him to just be 5-22 in the league. Paul Maineiri, the situation he inherited at LSU wasn't great. It was better than South Carolina, obviously. But the season as a whole wasn't great. Again, you had turnover on the roster even back then. You won 27 games in year 1. Missed the NCAA tournament. But you still managed 12 SEC wins. Again, strength of the league, all that different, I understand. But for it to be as bad as it's been, for South Carolina to lack the fundamentals that they have on the field, that doesn't look like a Paul Maineiri team. Paul Maineiri can coach. Like, Paul Maineiri still understands baseball. It's everything else that has been joined in to the game of baseball now, in recruiting and ancillary to that he's unfamiliar with. When Paul Maineiri left LSU in 2021, transfer portal, NIL, that was all still in its infancy. It's hard to watch. Because, again, while his legacy for me is safe, you won't be able to tell the story of Paul Maineiri's career now without this tenure at South Carolina. And look, I can't tell you if he's going to be let go after year one. I mean, Ray Tanner hired him and likes him a lot, but Ray Tanner has since retired as the athletic director. In fact, Ray Tanner will probably be on the call for a lot of these games this weekend against LSU. So now you have a new athletic director in there that didn't hire Paul Maineiri. It's not his guy. And you look at this year, and it's been really rough. The one thing I can tell you is this is Paul Maineiri's last job. He said that. And it just sucks to watch his career in this way. And I don't mean that he's getting fired after this year, but when this is over, it is the end of his career. And when you look at everything he did at LSU that was so great and everything he did at Notre Dame, but also the way things ended at LSU and how that's just kind of transferred and moved right into this tenure, it's rough. It really is rough. And it's not something that I really wanted to see. And quite frankly, as I said earlier, it's been tough to watch because that's a coach that has done so much good. And it's just prolonging the inevitable. And obviously, I don't wish Paul Maineiri in South Carolina any success this weekend. Going forward, I do, though. If he's still the coach there next year, I hope he gets it, more towards the right track. I don't think he's ever going to win anything big there because, again, as the conversation we had at the top of the show, I don't think the investment is there at South Carolina anymore. You got to invest in the football program. Shane Beamer's doing some pretty good things over there. You have to invest, men's basketball. It's a revenue generating sport. Obviously, they're going to invest plenty in Dawn Staley and her team. Baseball, which was once great at South Carolina, has kind of fallen down the pecking order. So it's hard to win anything of significance. But the 5-22 in the league, that's the black eye. That's what really sticks out so far for Paul Maineiri's tenure there. And again, I don't know what holds for the rest of it. But I know he wanted to coach. He had that itch. He got healthier and he thought he could do it again. And he wanted to give it a try. Just feels like, man, I could have done without having to. I could have done without him coming back because it ended in such a good spot at LSU. I know the record wasn't what it was, what you wanted it to be, and I get it. You hadn't been in the World Series since 2017 when you were the runner-up. I get it. But think of the way that season ended. You went on a run. You got hot for him. You won a road regional. You ended up 2 wins away from Omaha in a season that didn't have many highs. And that would have been a very fitting way for it to end. But it's not our choice. It's his. He's back in the game. It's been rough. Can't imagine it gets much better this weekend against LSU, but we'll see, and we'll see what the future holds. But the final chapter, it's going to be a hard one to read when it's all said and done. And this year has kind of been the beginning of that chapter under Paul Maineiri. Hopefully it gets better for him, just not this weekend against LSU. That we don't need that. But after that, obviously wish him all the luck in the world. All right. That's going to wrap it up. Y'all smash the like button, please, on your way out. Get subscribed. YouTube channel and on your favorite podcast app. Follow on social media. Be here next time for more. It's Musso at the Box. We will be previewing final thoughts, LSU and South Carolina. Next time, be here for that.